Hello, I'm Linor Moudou. Welcome to Africa 54. Here is what's coming up.
The Sudan conflict triggers a refugee crisis, displacing more than 10 million people within the country as clashes between the Sudanese Armed Forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces continue. Officials say the Kenyan police deployment to Haiti is imminent as the country prepares to lead an international force to tackle violence in the Caribbean nation. We'll have analysis. A young Ghanaian vying to be president of Student Representative Council shares his aspirations and dreams with VOA. All this and much more in today's Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast in Northeast Africa, where the war inside Sudan rages on, and the European Union has adopted sanctions against 6 people in Sudan on Monday. The fighting between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has engulfed the country. The sanctions include a general commanding the RSF in West Darfur, who the EU Council says is responsible for committing atrocities, instigating ethnically motivated killings, sexual violence, and the looting and burning of communities. The latest figures released by the United Nations International Organization for Migration show that more than 10 million Sudanese have fled their homes to avoid the fighting since the battles erupted in April 2023. The conflict has left the North African country in a severe refugee crisis. Many refugees fleeing war zones have headed to the Sudan Armed Forces controlled port of Sudan in the northeast.
I have no job, no source of income. The local community helps us. The refugee center here does not have refrigerators, so the residents nearby gave us ice to help us get through the summer. Nothing is more important than security. We just want to be safe and hope that Khartoum can return to the way it was. I have no job, no source of income.
There's a serious shortage of medical services, drugs, and food supplies in Sudan, but we are still trying to help, and the aid is ongoing. There are new displacements every day in Sudan, and the number now exceeds 10 million.
The blockade of major transportation routes by both sides is severely hindering the transportation of food, medicine, and other supplies, which is making the humanitarian situation in Sudan even worse. The UN says 18 million people in Sudan are suffering from acute hunger, and 3.6 million children are acutely malnourished. The U.S. chairman of the Joint Chiefs is making a rare trip to Africa to discuss ways to preserve some of the U.S. presence in West Africa after Niger decided to boot out the U.S. military in favor of partnering with Russia. Air Force General C.Q. Brown told reporters before landing in Botswana Monday that he was going to speak with several partners in the region. For more on his trip, for more information, VOA correspondent Carla Babb joins us from the Pentagon. Carla, what more can you tell us about Brown's visit to Africa?
Hi, sorry, I have lost audio here, but this is a very significant visit for the chairman. And I think that the fact that Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, visiting along with the head of U.S. Africa Command, General Michael Langley, is a very, very important symbol for African leaders to see right now, because there has been a significant change, as we know, with Niger happening. There's been a significant change. The U.S. is pulling out about 1,000 forces from the continent. So having these two leaders there makes a big statement. And it's also a learning time for the United States. General Brown told reporters that he would be talking to various partners during this conference to try to get a feel for what their objectives are and what their goals are for a U.S. military presence and a U.S. military partnership.
So what challenges does the U.S. face in maintaining alliances and counterterrorism efforts in the region?
Well, of course, the U.S. has strings attached to its military. You know, the U.S. doesn't work with just anyone. They have to stand up for democracy. So when there's a coup, the U.S. military is legally barred from supporting a government that took over from a democratically elected government and took them over. So that causes an issue for the United States, an issue that Russia doesn't have. And that's why a lot of the coup belt that we see, the Nigers, the Malis, Burkina Fasos, they try to work with the Russians as opposed to the U.S. But the U.S. does see a lot of areas where they could partner. And there has been an increased interest, according to Chairman Brown and General Langley, with a partnership with the United States. There is an opening. You know, there are hundreds of forces, hundreds of U.S. troops moving out of Niger. They could potentially go somewhere else. And while those generals will not say who is talking with them at this point, because of course they want to give these countries the openness to have these negotiations, officials do say that areas like Benin or Ghana or Ivory Coast are interested in deepening their partnership with the U.S.
What could make these three countries some viable options?
Well, I mean, we'll have to see in the coming days. And I should also point out that Chad, you know, U.S. forces pulled out of Chad. That was a temporary move, officials tell me. That could be an area where they negotiate having a greater U.S. troop presence. But those would be areas where the U.S. could still potentially continue their counterterror mission. I mean, the biggest reason that the United States was in West Africa was to oversee and to look at all of these terrorist groups that have just exploded in the region. And so that would be what the U.S. could definitely provide them via drones, via training, exercises, to help them be better prepared to fight those terrorists.
Carla, thank you so much. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb reporting live from the U.S. military headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Now, widespread youthful anti-tax demonstrations have erupted across Kenya over a proposed finance bill that aims to raise an extra $2.7 billion through additional taxes. Some Kenyans here in Washington, D.C. also have protested in solidarity with their fellow Kenyans back at home that are objecting to more taxes in the finance bill. They took to the streets, chanting protest songs against the contentious bill, urging its immediate withdrawal. Demonstrators say the finance bill threatens to stifle the economy and raise the cost of living for Kenyans who are already distressed financially. The International Monetary Fund, however, is virtually mandated the bill for reducing Kenya's budget deficit and state borrowing. Kenya is set to lead a UN-backed multinational peacekeeping mission with officers drawn from several countries to combat gang violence in Haiti that has left thousands of people dead and forced more than 360,000 to flee their homes. For more insight into this multinational peacekeeping mission, VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke to Edgar Gitua, an international relations, security, and diplomatic expert at the U.S. International University in Nairobi.
The public sentiments around whether Kenya needs to go or not, the government has also been working around the messaging, letting the idea marinate in the minds of Kenyans, because very many Kenyans believe Kenya cannot handle this because the US and Brazil are not able to handle this. Remember, Kenya will only contribute 1,000 troops. Other countries in Africa and other parts of the world will contribute the other troops as well. Kenya is just the lead nation in this Haiti mission. I am just hoping that this time around, by the time the troops land there, they will find the terrain is receptive. They will find the country is receptive to their presence, because otherwise, Barbecue has already threatened us and told us they will view us as an occupying force. They will view us as a puppet of the US and as an occupying force. And I think that perception needs to be managed and changed to prevent unnecessary bloodshed.
There are a lot of people concerned that this is going to be like a bloodbath of, troops, African troops arriving in Haiti. They have no clue about the terrain and what these guys, on the other hand, are waiting for them. And this could not turn out very well. But President William Ruto has reassured the nation, he has reassured the world that it's going to be safe for these troops. You've been on the ground, you interact with some of these people who could be even going to Haiti. What's their take?
I was privileged to be part of a think tank that discussed these issues at length. I was just invited as a guest to give my views in a think tank, in one of the think tanks, many think tanks based in Nairobi, and we were looking at the mission preparedness to Haiti. And in that meeting, we had retired security personnel from the defense forces and the police sector who talked candidly now about force preparedness. And I got the message that, number one, the Kenyan troops are prepared, they have the training, they have the requisite wherewithal and the know-how. But now, once again, the general sentiments on the ground and in the country are we need to make sure that we choose the right troops to go for that mission. Paul, let me tell you something that has been happening in many African countries. Whenever there is deployment of mission, of security personnel to these missions, because of the extra allowances and the huge allowances that they are going to earn, the list that is crafted of the people going is a list of the soldiers or policemen who are well connected, if you get what I'm trying to say. In other words, it is not a merit-based list.
Right.
So the first thing that Kenya needs to understand, and those are the sentiments that I presented at that forum, make sure that the list that the soldiers we send based on merit, meritocracy should be the criteria. Do not send us the children whose uncles are the big godfathers and the political wheeler dealers of the country, because there is a lot of money to be made from the trip. From a professional perspective, soldiers who can fly high the flag of Kenya and Africa, because this mission will make or break Kenya and many African countries in terms of being allowed to lead these kinds of missions.
That was Edgar Gitua, an international relations, security, and diplomatic expert at the U.S. International University in Nairobi, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. The first of 2 U.S. presidential debates will take place on Thursday, but the candidates' rhetoric around sensitive topics such as immigration and former President Donald Trump's recent hush money trial conviction is already heating up. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has the details.
Americans must wait until Thursday to know if Donald Trump's criminal conviction will be used as a line of attack on the debate stage by his Democratic re-election challenger, President Joe Biden.
But it's not just to call Donald Trump a convicted felon. It goes to his behavior and it goes to his character. Remember, he's actually filed bankruptcy 6 times. That means that he's not just a bad business guy. It means he screwed all the small people who actually relied on him for a living.
Trump denies those accusations and has also vowed to appeal the guilty verdict. While Biden has been preparing for the upcoming presidential debate behind closed doors, Trump opted to hit the campaign trail over the weekend. He made appearances in Washington and Philadelphia. He didn't hide his eagerness to debate, and at times asked his supporters' opinions on how he should behave when confronting Biden.
Should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak? 50-50. Be tough.
The presumptive Republican presidential nominee also used Saturday's rally to remind voters about his stance on undocumented immigrants.
And on day 1, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
Biden recently rolled out asylum processing restrictions at the southern border. But he also unveiled an action last week that would open the path to citizenship to undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. During his appearance on NBC, Biden's national re-election campaign co-chair blamed Trump and Republicans for the status quo.
The border is in trouble, and it has been for the past 20 or 30 years in this country. Joe Biden, on day one, sent a comprehensive immigration reform proposal to Congress. They did nothing with it.
Besides immigration, it is expected that Biden and Trump will be asked questions about several other thorny issues during the first presidential debate that will be hosted by CNN on June 27th. Veronica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
Israel's defense minister visits Washington this week for talks on the ongoing war with Hamas in Gaza. Meanwhile, international aid groups are scrambling to find survivors of recent Israeli strikes in the enclave, describing the scale of the damage as unprecedented. VOA's Arash.
At least for us, and to give you one very unfortunate but graphic detail, we literally found body parts scattered in different areas, including within the compound, which we then later collected.
The Israel Defense Forces released video claiming to show strikes on Hamas military structures in the Gaza Strip at around the same time. VOA cannot independently verify this or any other IDF content. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says more than 37,000 Palestinians have died in this conflict, which began October 7th of last year. It was then that the Western-identified terror group Hamas and its allies stormed into Israel, killing 1,200 and kidnapping some 250 others. Israel vowed the eradication of Hamas at all costs. But the scope of civilian casualties and widespread destruction of Palestinian territories gave even Israel's staunchest allies pause and led to the United States suspending a weapons shipment of bombs over fears of Israel dropping them in densely populated civilian areas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last week released a video publicly accusing the White House of withholding weapons and ammunition from Israel. At a cabinet meeting over the weekend, he told officials that the basic state of affairs did not change with the U.S., adding that weapons shipments have slowed to a trickle. The White House says Netanyahu's comments came as a shock.
Those comments were deeply disappointing and certainly vexing to us, given the amount of support that we have and will continue to provide Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Following a week in which Netanyahu disbanded his war cabinet, Israelis again turned out for their weekly protest of Netanyahu's government, calling for his removal and the return of hostages still held by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel continues operations in bordering Lebanon, targeting a member of the Hamas-allied Islamic group. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the IDF is ready for any further action in Gaza, Lebanon, and unspecified additional places. Gallant left Sunday for meetings in Washington. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll profile a rising young politician in Ghana. Stay with us.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, Greek authorities say 77 migrants were rescued off a crippled sailing yacht after a major overnight operation in the southern Aegean Sea. There are no reports of anyone missing or injured. Greece is a key entry point for thousands of people from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia seeking a better life in the European Union. Following the death of 2 demonstrators, Kenyan President William Ruto says he's ready to hold conversations with the thousands of peaceful young protesters who held nationwide protests opposing proposed tax increases. The demonstrations were organized on social media and led largely by Gen Z Kenyans who live-streamed their discontent. And a power-sharing agreement between South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress Party and the Democratic Alliance, one of the country's few white-led parties, has unwittingly renewed some racial rifts. Many black South Africans are expressing discomfort with a white-led party being back in power, even in a coalition. The country remains haunted by the apartheid system of white minority rule that ended 30 years ago. Young politicians in Africa rarely reach the peaks of their careers in their youth. But some, like 22-year-old student Patrick Apiakie, appears to be defying this trend. He's running for president of the Student Representative Council. Here is insight into his journey, his philosophy, aspirations, and dreams as one of the rising young politicians in Ghana. VOA's Edmond Achiekumi reports from Kumasi, Ghana.
University campuses have been the training grounds for most Ghanaian politicians. The Tertiary Students Confederacy, that is TESCON, and the Tertiary Education Initiative Network, that is TAIN, serve as the major training and recruitment platforms for the 2 major political parties in Ghana, the New Patriotic Party, that is the NPP, and the National Democratic Congress, that is the NDC. In Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KNUST, the position of Student Representative Council, SRC, president is very prestigious and highly coveted. Most SRC presidents, former ones, have gone ahead to have impressive political careers. Patrick Apiakie is one of such aspirants. He is young, he is determined, and he desires to win the hearts of all Ghanaians.
At Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, campaign flyers of hopeful aspirants can be seen all over the campus. Every year, the second semester is called Agenda Season. Agenda is a slang for political position within the university, where hundreds of such positions, from faculties to fraternities, are to be filled. But the Students' Representative Council elections are the most anticipated. Patrick Apiakie, a 22-year-old sociology student, is determined to become its president.
I do not think leadership is about matters of controlling people or being in control. I think genuinely leadership is matters of having an opportunity to serve the general will of the people, that is the collective will of the people. And it is for this reason that even since SHS, I have always participated actively in student politics or matters of decision making.
When I serve as the next SRC president, I will redistribute your resources in building for you an SRC shop.
Even though I am affiliated to the Tertiary Students Confederacy, which subscribes to the liberal democratic ideologies of the New Patriotic Party, I am more sympathetic towards policies and reform that target the needs of the people. I do not think the winner-takes-all mentality is good for any political climate.
I give my life for, I give my life to
Patrick says he draws inspiration from politicians like former US President Barack Obama, former President of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and former President of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara. Patrick's claim to embody the I am for the people ideology seemed to resonate well with some of the students. Sapon Kwabna Jakiti, a student and a voter, believes Patrick is the most approachable of all the candidates.
You see, I've been in this school for a very long time, and then you realize, you know, there are SRC president coming in and then going out. But I noticed that none of them have that kind of, you know, relationship with the boys. Believe me, we are all students here, and then there is no one who will come to an SRC president and tell him that maybe I need money to go and buy food or anything. But we need someone who is down with us so that in terms of maybe academic issue, we can approach the president and let the president understand that, oh, Charlie, this is what we are going through.
Old age is an indicator of experience in our part of the world. Power rarely comes to the young. However, I think exceptional leaders like former President of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara, and President Paul Kagame of Rwanda were lucky or fortunate enough to have served their countries at very young ages. And then I think the continent is now tilting towards the culture of giving young people the opportunity of serving, especially with the election of President Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal in contemporary times.
TESCON, the student wing of the NPP, has a number of their members on the SRC presidential ticket. Yeboah Mevisajewa, organizer of TESCON KNUST, believes that Patrick is capable of victory and feels that his political career will continue even after university.
He's very innovative, open-minded, and when it comes to problems and solutions, he's very good at it. I wish him and other aspirants the best in this year's election. TESCON is supporting each and every one and wish them the best of luck.
Patrick's supporters acknowledge that juggling lectures and political activism is not an easy undertaking, but some of his lecturers think that he may not have his priorities in order.
The university wants you to graduate, finish school with your certificate. So, in as much as you aspire to be a leader, try to know the reason why you are here.
Patrick disagrees. He believes he can strike this balance by being his best both as a student and as a student leader.
I do not play with my studies at all. I understand how fundamental that is to my personal growth and career as a young and emerging politician. I make extra time for campaigning and activism, and that is how I have approached every position I have held way back from my SHS days till today, that's my university days.
Patrick is optimistic about his future in the political landscape and urges Ghana and Africa to watch out for him.
Africa is entering into a new age of political activism. There will be a shift from older generations to young people. Papache is here to stay, and I will be a part of this political renaissance. Watch out for me.
Edmond Ajay Kumi, VOA News, Ghana.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.